The story of Ragnar Lothbrok begins not with a roar of battle or the clash of swords, but in the quiet spaces of memory and imagination. It begins in the misty landscapes of Scandinavia, where fjords meet the sea, and where forests, dense and ancient, stretch endlessly under pale skies. These lands were harsh yet beautiful, demanding resilience from those who called them home. They demanded courage, endurance, and a certain quiet determination that is rarely spoken of but deeply felt. It is within this world, one of both wonder and challenge, that the legend of Ragnar Lothbrok takes its first tentative steps. Ragnar himself is a figure suspended between history and myth. Some stories speak of him as a real warrior, a chieftain who raided foreign shores and carved his name into the annals of Viking history. Others tell of him as a composite figure, an embodiment of the Viking spirit, whose deeds were magnified and romanticized over centuries. For our purposes, it is perhaps best to see him as both, a man of flesh and blood whose actions inspired stories that transcended time. This duality, the blend of the real and the imagined, is what allows us to approach his story in a slow, contemplative way, one that invites reflection rather than urgency. Before we meet Ragnar in the heat of battle or the center of political intrigue, it is worth pausing to consider the world he inhabited. Scandinavia in the 9th century was a place of contrast. Summers were long and luminous, with sunlight lingering late into the evening, softening the edges of hills and rivers. Winters, by contrast, were cold and unforgiving, with days so short that the sun barely rose above the horizon. Life was structured by these rhythms, by the slow turning of the seasons, by the cycles of planting, harvesting, hunting, and fishing. People depended on one another, on their communities, on the careful balance of nature. It was a world where survival itself required a quiet strength, a patient attentiveness to the small details of everyday life. Yet even within this measured existence, there was room for adventure and ambition. The seas, vast and unpredictable, called to those who were willing to risk everything. Rivers and fjords offered pathways to lands beyond the horizon, to places filled with opportunities, dangers, and stories waiting to be told. It was in this environment, shaped by both necessity and possibility, that the notion of heroism emerged. And it is in this same environment that Ragnar's story begins, slowly and deliberately, like a dawn breaking over a quiet village. Ragnar's legend, in part, is a reflection of the human desire for meaning and for narrative. Tales of warriors, kings, and explorers provide a sense of order in a world that often feels unpredictable. They allow us to see courage, strategy, and resourcefulness in action, and they offer a lens through which we can consider our own lives, our own choices, and our own quiet battles. In telling the story of Ragnar, we are also exploring what it means to face challenges, to navigate uncertainty, and to leave a mark on the world, however small or fleeting it might be. As we move through this story, it is important to approach it without haste. Each moment in Ragnar's life, whether steeped in historical record or wrapped in legend, deserves attention. The purpose of this narrative is not to thrill or alarm, but to immerse, to soothe, and to invite reflection. It is a story meant to be experienced slowly, like walking through a fog-laden forest, each step deliberate, each breath measured. The richness of the story lies not just in the events themselves, but in the spaces between them, in the quiet thoughts of a man preparing for battle, in the gentle sway of a longship upon the waves, in the silent anticipation of a world waiting to be explored. Ragnar's story is also a story of contrasts. It juxtaposes the harshness of the natural world with the warmth of human connection. It places acts of bravery alongside moments of vulnerability, and it reminds us that legends are not born solely from victories, but from the interplay of courage, failure, perseverance, and imagination. By examining these contrasts, we can begin to understand why Ragnar's tale has endured for centuries, why it continues to capture the imagination, and why it is as much about the inner life of a person as it is about outward deeds. Ultimately, the legend of Ragnar Lothbrok invites us into a space of calm reflection. It allows us to consider the past in a slow, deliberate way, to appreciate the beauty of history and myth intertwined. It is a story that is vast in scope yet intimate in detail, offering both the grandeur of Viking expeditions and the quiet moments that define human experience. As we continue this journey, we will meet Ragnar in his youth, follow him across stormy seas, witness the challenges of leadership, and explore the enduring myths that surround his name. Each chapter of this story has been chosen to soothe the mind, gently engage curiosity, and allow the imagination to drift comfortably between fact and legend. So, let us begin this journey together into the world of Ragnar Lothbrok, where history and myth intertwine, where bravery and contemplation coexist, and where the gentle unfolding of a life, both real and legendary, can carry us into a calm, reflective space. There is no rush, no urgency, only the steady, measured rhythm of a story told with care. And it is within this rhythm that we may find both fascination and relaxation, as the tale of Ragnar slowly unfurls before us. To understand Ragnar Lothbrok, one must first step gently into the world he was born into, a world both harsh and mesmerizing, shaped by nature's rhythms and human resilience. Scandinavia in the 9th century was a land of contrasts. Towering mountains, deep fjords, and dense forests that seemed to stretch endlessly under the pale, ever-changing skies. The seasons ruled the lives of those who lived there, dictating what could be grown, hunted, or fished, and determining how communities survived from one year to the next. Winters were long and unforgiving, with snow blanketing the land and days so brief that the sun's light barely touched the earth. Summers, on the other hand, were surprisingly luminous, with golden hours lingering late into the evening, softening the jagged edges of cliffs and the ripples of rivers, casting a gentle glow over villages and farmland. The Viking world was one of both simplicity and subtle sophistication. Communities were small, often clustered around fertile land near rivers or the coast, where fishing could supplement the harvest and trade could flourish. Houses were constructed from wood and stone, their roofs thatched with reeds, providing warmth against the bitter cold. Inside these homes, families gathered around fires, telling stories and passing down wisdom from one generation to the next. These quiet moments of domestic life stand in gentle contrast to the fearsome reputation Vikings would earn in foreign lands, and it is within this balance, between home and adventure, between safety and risk, that we begin to sense the rhythm of Ragnar's world. The sea played an immense role in the lives of the Norse people. Fjords and rivers were both highways and boundaries, guiding travel, trade, and communication. Longships, sleek and formidable, were the lifeblood of Viking exploration. They allowed warriors, merchants, and explorers to navigate waters that could be as calm as glass or as violent as storms themselves. These vessels were marvels of design, built to glide swiftly over waves while remaining nimble enough to slip into narrow rivers. Life at sea required patience, skill, and courage, and it is no small wonder that tales of Viking voyages evoke both admiration and a quiet sense of awe. The sea was as much a teacher as it was a highway, shaping the people who relied upon it for sustenance, wealth, and survival. Daily life in Viking society was shaped by the environment and by necessity. Men and women alike contributed to survival, whether tending fields, hunting game, crafting tools, or preserving food for the harsh winter months. Children were educated not in schools as we think of them today, but in the ways of life, learning to navigate rivers, handle tools, and understand the rhythms of the seasons. Communities relied heavily on cooperation, with shared labor and shared knowledge forming the backbone of society. Even leisure had its place, whether through music, storytelling, or simple games that allowed the mind to rest while the body remained engaged. These small, quiet routines offered stability in a world that could otherwise feel unpredictable, and they laid the foundation for the legends of individuals like Ragnar. At the same time, Vikings were explorers at heart. The lands surrounding Scandinavia, England, Ireland, Francia, and beyond, beckoned with promise and opportunity. Rivers became pathways to distant settlements, and the sea carried daring travelers to lands that were both foreign and intriguing. The possibilities for trade, raiding, and settlement expanded the horizons of Viking life, blending necessity with curiosity, survival with ambition. It was within this context of exploration that Ragnar's story would eventually unfold, a story that captures both the measured rhythms of home and the exhilaration of the unknown. Viking culture was also rich in storytelling, belief, and ritual. Religion intertwined with daily life, not only in worship and ceremony but also in the ways people understood courage, fate, and the natural world. Norse myths and sagas provided moral lessons, cultural identity, and imaginative landscapes in which heroes faced challenges both grand and intimate. These stories were shared slowly, often around fires on long winter nights, inviting reflection and contemplation rather than immediate action. In this way, Viking storytelling is remarkably compatible with the slow, immersive style of historical narration we are using now. It encourages the mind to wander gently through a vivid past. Conflict and survival were constants, yet they were balanced by ingenuity and cooperation. Farmers defended their land, craftsmen produced tools and weapons, and communities negotiated with neighboring settlements to ensure stability. Even the raiding, which has become the most famous aspect of Viking life, was approached with a strategic calm. Planning, navigation, timing, and intelligence were key, and such raids were as much about skill and strategy as they were about courage. In this way, the Viking world was not only fierce but also measured, a place where thought and preparation mattered as much as strength and bravery. It is within this landscape of natural beauty, cultural richness, and practical resilience that Ragnar Lothbrok would grow and thrive. Understanding this context allows us to appreciate the blend of history and legend that surrounds him. We can imagine the quiet evenings in his village, the rhythmic sound of the sea against the longships, the careful instruction of elders and mentors, and the gradual accumulation of skills that would later define him as a warrior and a leader. Every element of the Viking world, the forests, the fjords, the villages, and the sea, contributed to shaping not just Ragnar himself, but also the stories that would immortalize him. By contemplating this world in a slow, deliberate manner, we can begin to understand why Ragnar's tale resonates even today. It is not just the feats of battle or the conquest of lands that make him legendary, it is also the human experience embedded in his story, the quiet resilience, the strategic patience, the ability to navigate both danger and daily life with skill and foresight. This duality between the extraordinary and the everyday is what allows us to enter his story in a calm, reflective way. As we continue, we will meet Ragnar in his youth, explore his early adventures, and witness the challenges and triumphs that would carry him into legend. But before we do, it is essential to remain immersed in the rhythm of this world, the rhythm of the seasons, the rhythm of life along the fjords, and the rhythm of people quietly shaping their destinies against a backdrop of natural grandeur. In this way, the world of the Vikings slowly unfolds, offering both fascination and tranquility, a perfect setting for the legend of Ragnar Lothbrok to emerge. Ragnar Lothbrok's story, like the soft unfolding of a long winter morning, begins in the quiet spaces of childhood and youth, long before swords clashed or longships cut through the waves. His early life, though clouded in mystery and myth, offers glimpses into the shaping of a man who would later become legendary. It is said that he was born into a world that valued courage, resilience, and the ability to read both people and the land, skills that would serve him throughout his life. Even the most ordinary moments of his youth contributed, quietly and steadily, to the formation of the man remembered in stories and sagas. The details of Ragnar's parentage are both fascinating and elusive. Some accounts suggest that he was the son of a petty king or chieftain, while others hint at a lineage intertwined with mystery and ambition. His family, like many in the Viking Age, would have lived close to the land, reliant on farming, hunting, and the careful management of resources. It is easy to imagine young Ragnar observing the routines of daily life, the tending of livestock, the shaping of tools, the preparation of meals for harsh winters, absorbing lessons that were as practical as they were moral. Even in these seemingly quiet moments, the foundations of resilience and intelligence were being laid. From a young age, Ragnar would have been exposed to the duality of his world, the beauty of the land and the harshness of survival. Children in Viking society learned through observation and participation, gradually mastering the skills necessary to navigate both the home and the wider environment. They learned to row, to handle simple weapons, and to understand the rhythms of nature that dictated planting, harvesting, hunting, and fishing. Each lesson, though imparted in a calm and measured way, prepared a young mind for the challenges that lay ahead, shaping a sense of self-reliance and awareness that would later define Ragnar's character. Storytelling, music, and myth played an equally important role in the formation of his early years. Around fires in the longhouses, elders shared sagas of gods, heroes, and monsters, their voices rising and falling like the tides. Through these tales, Ragnar would have absorbed the values and ideals of his culture, bravery, cleverness, and the understanding that life was both unpredictable and full of possibility. These moments of oral tradition, gentle and rhythmic in delivery, offered a framework for understanding the world, encouraging imagination while reinforcing lessons of courage and wisdom. They also instilled a sense of wonder, a quiet reverence for the unknown, and an awareness that ordinary lives could be transformed into stories that endured across generations. Young Ragnar's education was not limited to stories and practical skills. It also encompassed the subtleties of observation and strategy. He would have watched elders negotiate disputes, plan journeys, and maintain alliances, learning that strength alone was not enough to succeed. Understanding others, anticipating challenges, and thinking ahead were all as vital as physical prowess. These early lessons in diplomacy, cunning, and patience would later become hallmarks of his legendary exploits. It is a reminder that even the most storied figures often begin with small, unassuming steps, each quietly shaping the trajectory of a life destined to be remembered. While there is no definitive record of Ragnar's childhood exploits, sagas suggest moments of daring even in youth. He is said to have shown exceptional skill in both combat training and clever problem-solving, traits that hinted at his potential for greatness. These stories, told slowly and deliberately over generations, transform ordinary experiences into the tapestry of legend. They invite the listener to linger over each detail, to imagine the cautious excitement of a young boy testing his abilities, learning boundaries, and discovering the thrill of competence and confidence. Education in the Viking world extended to physical conditioning and preparedness. Young men practiced with bows and spears, learning to navigate forests, rivers, and uneven terrain. The ability to move silently, to read the wind and the water, to anticipate danger and opportunity, was cultivated gradually. Ragnar, like his peers, would have spent hours refining these skills, sometimes in play, sometimes in earnest, each moment building awareness and resilience. There is a quiet poetry in imagining him walking through forests, feeling the textures of bark and stone under his fingers, listening to the whisper of the wind, and learning to move in harmony with the natural world. Ragnar's early life also hints at an innate curiosity and ambition, qualities that would propel him beyond the borders of his home. Stories suggest a restless spirit, one attentive to both opportunity and risk, always seeking understanding and experience beyond the immediate environment. He would have observed the comings and goings of traders, the preparations of longships for distant journeys, and the discussions of warriors planning raids or alliances. Each encounter, each observation, added to a slowly growing awareness of the wider world, a foundation for the adventures and decisions that would later define his life. It is within these quiet, formative years that the seed of legend begins to take root. The mixture of home life, cultural education, practical skills, and personal curiosity cultivated a character that could later navigate both the tangible challenges of the Viking world and the imaginative challenges of myth-making. Young Ragnar's experiences, though often ordinary on the surface, laid the groundwork for extraordinary narrative possibilities, reminding us that legends are not born overnight but slowly cultivated over time. By imagining Ragnar's early years in this slow, reflective manner, we allow ourselves to enter his story gently. We see him not just as a figure of myth or history, but as a boy growing into a man, learning to observe, to act, and to think in a world that was at once harsh, beautiful, and full of quiet lessons. These early experiences, though often understated, were essential threads in the tapestry of his life, weaving together the skills, wisdom, and resilience that would later support the feats, decisions, and legends that make his story so enduring and captivating. As Ragnar Lothbrok grew into adulthood, the quiet rhythms of his youth gradually gave way to the broader world beyond his village, a world of fjords, rivers, and endless seas. It was a world where opportunity and danger traveled side by side, and where courage and cunning were as valuable as strength. In the Viking Age, raiding was not merely a pursuit of plunder, it was a carefully measured practice, a combination of exploration, strategy, and survival, all conducted under the watchful eye of the unpredictable seas. For Ragnar, these early ventures became both training and legend, shaping him into the warrior whose name would echo through sagas for centuries. The preparation for a raid began long before ships set sail. Villages meticulously stocked provisions, mended sails, sharpened weapons, and trained warriors in the art of navigation and combat. Every detail mattered, from the angle of a longship's oars to the placement of shields along its sides. In this environment, patience was as important as bravery. Ragnar would have observed, absorbed, and practiced, learning not only to fight but also to anticipate, to read tides and winds, and to sense the moods of men as much as nature. There is a quiet rhythm to these preparations, one that is rarely dramatic yet essential, laying the foundation for successful voyages and survival in foreign lands. Longships, elegant and formidable, were the vehicles of these adventures. Their sleek designs allowed them to glide swiftly over open seas while navigating narrow rivers, giving Vikings access to both coastal towns and inland settlements. Life aboard these ships was measured and disciplined, with each crew member performing tasks that were essential to the voyage. The sound of waves against the hull, the rhythmic beat of oars, and the creak of timber under stress created a meditative atmosphere, one that required focus and cooperation. For Ragnar, time spent at sea honed not only his skills but also his patience and understanding of the natural world, teaching lessons that extended beyond warfare into leadership and strategy. Raids themselves were a mix of calculated risk and sudden action. The Vikings often targeted monasteries, towns, and settlements along rivers and coasts, places where wealth and resources could be obtained with precision. These ventures demanded careful observation, reconnaissance, and planning. Ragnar's ingenuity and cunning became evident in such operations, as stories suggest he often employed tactics that combined stealth with decisive force. There was an artistry to this work, a quiet elegance in understanding when to act and when to wait, a balance of courage and caution that distinguished great leaders from ordinary warriors. Yet, not all of Ragnar's journeys were marked by conflict. Many voyages were also about exploration, trade, and diplomacy. Vikings sought new lands for settlement, established trading posts, and forged alliances with distant peoples. These undertakings required negotiation, understanding of foreign customs and adaptability, skills that Ragnar would have developed alongside his combat abilities. The contrast between raiding and exploration reflects the dual nature of Viking life. Moments of tension and danger were interwoven with reflection, observation, and the slow accumulation of knowledge. It is this duality that allows us to appreciate their adventures in a calm, contemplative way, without becoming overwhelmed by the drama. Stories of Ragnar's exploits are often tinged with legend, yet they provide glimpses into his growing reputation. He is said to have led daring expeditions across seas to England, Francia, and beyond, sometimes returning with wealth and prestige, other times facing setbacks that tested his resolve. Each journey, whether successful or challenging, contributed to the tapestry of his legend, blending real events with narrative embellishment. As we recount these adventures slowly, we can imagine not just the battles and victories but also the quiet moments in between, the lapping of water against the ship, the shared silence of the crew, the anticipation of land appearing on the horizon. These moments, gentle and immersive, allow us to experience history as both vivid and restful. The preparation, execution, and return from these raids also highlight the social structures of Viking society. Leaders like Ragnar were responsible for maintaining morale, ensuring the welfare of their men, and making strategic decisions that could mean the difference between triumph and disaster. Leadership required a balance of authority and empathy, decisiveness and patience. Stories suggest that Ragnar's ability to navigate these responsibilities with skill contributed to his growing influence and eventual fame. Observing him in this way, we see not only the actions of a warrior but the quiet intelligence and foresight that defined his approach to life and legend. Alongside these practical and strategic lessons, there was a moral and cultural dimension to Viking raids. Success brought honor, failure could bring shame, and the memory of deeds, both brave and cautious, was preserved in song, story, and saga. This interplay between action and remembrance underscores why storytelling was such a vital part of Viking culture. Ragnar's exploits were not just recorded for historical accuracy but were crafted into narratives that conveyed lessons, ideals, and imagination, gently shaping the culture of both his people and the generations that followed. It is important to reflect on the rhythm of these adventures. While raids could be dangerous and chaotic, life on the sea and in preparation for battle was often slow and methodical. Time was measured in the sweep of tides, the care taken to navigate unknown waters, and the subtle negotiation of risk. This measured pace, juxtaposed with occasional bursts of action, creates a narrative that is both engaging and calming. By focusing on the deliberate and contemplative aspects of Viking life, we can explore Ragnar's story without urgency, allowing each episode of his life to unfold gently in the imagination. Ragnar's raids and adventures also illustrate the interplay between individual skill and collective effort. No longship sailed alone, and no victory was achieved solely by one man. Ragnar's leadership was exercised in harmony with the abilities, loyalty, and courage of those around him. The stories of his exploits, when recounted with calm attention, emphasize not only his personal bravery but also his understanding of human dynamics, strategy, and timing. This balance between personal ability and cooperative effort is a hallmark of his legend and an enduring aspect of Viking life, offering lessons in patience, awareness, and the quiet power of shared purpose. Through these early adventures, Ragnar gradually transformed from a young man of skill and curiosity into a figure of reputation and legend. His experiences at sea and in foreign lands shaped his intellect, his courage, and his understanding of the human and natural worlds. These formative adventures, told slowly and with attention to both detail and mood, create a rich, immersive experience for the listener, allowing the mind to wander through fjords, across waves, and into the quiet spaces of reflection and anticipation. It is within these adventures that we begin to see the foundation of the legend, a blend of daring action, strategic insight, and thoughtful observation that would define Ragnar Lothbrok for centuries to come. As Ragnar Lothbrok matured, the tales of his voyages, battles, and cunning spread across the lands of Scandinavia and beyond. His reputation as a formidable warrior and strategist grew steadily, earning him not only respect among his peers but also the opportunity to ascend into positions of leadership. Becoming a king was not a sudden event. It was a gradual accumulation of experience, reputation, and influence, built upon the quiet foundation of skill, intelligence, and personal relationships. Ragnar's rise to kingship offers a chance to reflect on how power and responsibility intersect, and how leadership can be as much about foresight and patience as it is about strength and bravery. Leadership in the Viking world was complex and nuanced. Kings were expected not only to lead in battle but also to manage the intricate social networks of their people, including alliances, rivalries, and the well-being of their subjects. Ragnar's approach to kingship was informed by years of experience navigating both the natural and human landscapes. He understood the importance of observation, the value of strategy, and the necessity of measured decision-making. These qualities, often understated in traditional depictions of Viking leaders, were central to his effectiveness and allowed him to maintain cohesion among men who were accustomed to both freedom and autonomy. Ragnar's rise as king was also a reflection of the Viking emphasis on reputation and honor. A leader's legitimacy was often tied to deeds, courage, and the respect of peers rather than simple inheritance. Ragnar had demonstrated his abilities through successful raids, exploration, and the careful management of his people. Each achievement, whether in the form of wealth brought back from distant lands or successful resolution of disputes, added to the aura of authority that surrounded him. This steady accumulation of respect allowed him to command loyalty without force, a subtle form of power that relied on trust, admiration, and the perception of competence. Governance under Ragnar, as the sagas suggest, involved a delicate balance between firmness and flexibility. He had to ensure the safety and prosperity of his people while simultaneously pursuing opportunities for expansion and influence. Decisions about raiding, trade, or settlement required both foresight and calculation, and even minor errors could have serious consequences. Ragnar's legendary ability to weigh these factors carefully, to anticipate outcomes, and to act decisively when necessary, distinguished him as a ruler capable of navigating the uncertainties of his time. It is this combination of patience, observation, and decisive action that allowed his leadership to flourish, quietly yet effectively, in a world that demanded constant vigilance. The responsibilities of kingship extended beyond immediate strategy to include diplomacy and negotiation. Ragnar interacted with neighboring chieftains, foreign rulers, and distant communities, forging alliances and sometimes navigating tension or conflict. The subtle art of leadership required understanding the desires, fears, and ambitions of others. Ragnar's success in these interactions, as suggested by both historical and legendary accounts, relied on his ability to listen, to anticipate, and to communicate in ways that were both authoritative and approachable. It was a form of leadership that required intelligence and empathy, qualities that are often overlooked in tales focused solely on battle. At the same time, Ragnar's kingship did not remove him from the life of a warrior. He continued to lead expeditions, both to protect his territories and to expand his influence. These ventures demanded a careful blending of courage and strategy, and his experience as a raider gave him insight into planning, risk assessment, and the execution of complex operations. Unlike many leaders who might have remained behind in safety, Ragnar's presence alongside his men reinforced loyalty, boosted morale, and demonstrated that he shared in both the hardships and triumphs of those he led. This combination of leadership in both council and combat added depth to his reputation, creating a sense of authority rooted in both action and wisdom. Family and succession were also critical concerns for Ragnar as king. Ensuring that his lineage would continue and that his children would be prepared for future leadership required attention to both personal and political matters. Teaching, mentoring, and guiding his sons, as well as managing relationships with his wives, were essential aspects of maintaining stability and continuity. These domestic and familial responsibilities, though quieter than battles and conquests, were no less important in shaping his legacy. They reflect the subtle balance of Viking kingship, where power was exercised through both grand gestures and careful, everyday decisions. Ragnar's reign, as portrayed in the sagas, also illustrates the interplay between legend and reality. Some stories describe his strategic brilliance and daring as king, while others emphasize wisdom, patience, and foresight. These accounts, when considered together, provide a rich portrait of leadership that is at once heroic and human. They invite the listener to contemplate not only the events themselves but also the qualities that enabled a man to command loyalty, respect, and admiration in a complex and often unpredictable world. In doing so, they create a narrative that is both engaging and gentle, ideal for slow reflection. Leadership in Ragnar's time was also intimately connected to the land itself. A king's prosperity depended on understanding agriculture, trade routes, natural resources and environmental conditions. Ragnar's attentiveness to these factors, combined with his ability to inspire and organize people, helped ensure that his territories were not only defended but also productive and sustainable. This attention to detail, though often understated in heroic tales, was essential for long-term stability and reflects a form of leadership that is both grounded and thoughtful. By exploring Ragnar's role as king in this calm and measured way, we see a figure whose greatness was not defined solely by conquest or reputation but by his ability to navigate the complexities of human society and the natural world. Kingship required patience, intelligence, observation, courage and empathy, all of which were cultivated through years of experience and reflection. Ragnar's story as a leader reminds us that power is most enduring when exercised thoughtfully and with awareness, and that true legacy comes not only from bold deeds but also from steady, careful guidance over time. Through these reflections, we gain insight into the subtle rhythms of Viking leadership. Ragnar's kingship was not a single dramatic event, but a continuous process of decision, observation and action, balanced with reflection and foresight. It is a story that unfolds slowly, allowing the listener to absorb the depth and complexity of his character while remaining calm and contemplative. By focusing on these aspects, we can appreciate not only the external achievements of Ragnar as king but also the internal qualities that made his leadership remarkable and his legend enduring. Ragnar Lothbrok's story is not solely one of battles and kingship. It is also a story of family, of relationships that shaped his life and the legacy he left behind. While his feats at sea and in war earned him fame, it was his role as husband and father that connected him most deeply to the cycles of life and the continuity of his people. Within the quiet moments of family life, amid the domestic rhythms of home and hearth, the human side of Ragnar emerges, reminding us that even legendary figures are defined not just by grandeur but also by intimacy and care. Ragnar is said to have had multiple wives, the most renowned being Lagertha, a shield maiden of strength and courage, and a Slog, a woman of wisdom and mystery. Each of these relationships played a role in shaping his character and expanding the narrative of his life. With Lagertha, Ragnar is often portrayed as sharing a bond grounded in mutual respect and shared adventure. Together, they navigated both the domestic and martial spheres, blending the ordinary routines of family life with the extraordinary challenges of their environment. These relationships, while sometimes complicated by circumstance, offer a glimpse into the softer and more reflective aspects of Ragnar's story, highlighting the interplay between human connection and legendary deeds. Children, as in many Viking households, were central to both daily life and long-term legacy. Ragnar's sons, most notably Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, Hvitserk and Sigurd Snake in the Eye, would themselves grow into figures of fame, each carrying a fragment of their father's legend forward into the world. The upbringing of these sons was both practical and cultural. They were trained in combat, navigation and survival, but also educated in the sagas, the traditions and the wisdom that would guide them as leaders. In this way, Ragnar's legacy was transmitted not only through his conquests but also through the careful cultivation of knowledge, skill and character in his children. Family life in Viking culture was a blend of routine and ritual, labor and celebration. Mornings might begin with tending animals or fields, preparing meals or mending tools and clothes, while evenings were often spent around fires, telling stories or sharing news from distant lands. These domestic moments, gentle and cyclical, allowed children to learn the rhythms of life, the importance of cooperation, and the quiet art of observation. For Ragnar, these experiences offered both grounding and inspiration, a space to reflect on what kind of father, husband, and leader he wanted to be. Even the simple act of guiding a son through a task or observing a daughter's curiosity could carry lessons in patience, insight, and care. At the same time, the legacy of a man like Ragnar was inseparable from the tensions and challenges of his environment. Families were often tested by external threats, political alliances, and the harsh realities of Viking life. Rivalries could erupt, villages could be threatened, and voyages could result in absence or danger for extended periods. In these moments, Ragnar's attentiveness, decisiveness, and wisdom as both father and leader became crucial. His ability to maintain the cohesion and morale of his family mirrored the skills that allowed him to lead men into battle or navigate the complexities of kingship, blending strength with sensitivity. The sagas that recount Ragnar's family life often emphasize contrasts between fatherly affection and the demands of leadership, between the intimacy of home and the excitement of exploration. These stories, while sometimes stylized or legendary, offer a meditation on the human dimensions of power. They remind us that the same man who could inspire fear in distant lands could also nurture, protect, and guide those closest to him. It is in this interplay between public deeds and private life that Ragnar's story gains both depth and resonance, providing a gentle balance suitable for slow, reflective listening. Marriage and family were also strategic in Viking society, intertwining personal relationships with political alliances. Wives could bring influence, resources, or connections, and their counsel could shape decisions in both domestic and political spheres. Ragnar's partnerships with Lagertha and Aslog exemplify this dual role. Both women were not only companions but also advisors, contributing insight and support that enhanced his effectiveness as a leader. Recognizing the role of women in these stories adds a layer of nuance to the narrative, demonstrating that even legendary figures depended on networks of trust, collaboration, and mutual respect. Children carried both the promise of the future and the weight of expectation. Ragnar's sons, each with distinctive personalities and abilities, faced the challenge of living up to the reputation of their father while forging their own paths. The sagas suggest that Ragnar guided them with a combination of instruction, example, and careful observation, allowing them to learn from both his successes and his errors. This approach reflects the slow, deliberate nature of legacy. It is not imposed abruptly but cultivated over time, through attention, patience, and gentle guidance. Each lesson, each observation, each story passed down in the quiet of home contributed to the shaping of a new generation of leaders. Even beyond his immediate family, Ragnar's influence extended into the broader community. His ability to balance strength, strategy, and wisdom earned him respect that rippled outward, shaping alliances and inspiring loyalty. Family, in this sense, was both a microcosm and a foundation. The skills, values, and relationships nurtured within the home formed the basis for wider influence and enduring legacy. It is a reminder that the legend of a figure like Ragnar is not simply a record of outward achievement, but a reflection of the subtle, everyday choices, relationships, and teachings that give life continuity and meaning. Through the lens of family and legacy, we see Ragnar Lothbrok not merely as a warrior or king, but as a man shaped by connection, responsibility, and care. His relationships, his guidance of his children, and his attentiveness to both domestic and communal life revealed dimensions of character that complement the more dramatic tales of raids and battles. In contemplating this aspect of his story, we gain a deeper appreciation for the slow, deliberate cultivation of legacy and the gentle but persistent rhythms of life that underpin even the most legendary figures. By reflecting on family, we understand that Ragnar's story is both intimate and expansive. The bonds he formed, the wisdom he imparted, and the lives he touched are all part of a legacy that extends far beyond his own time. As we continue this narrative, we will see how these relationships interact with the more challenging chapters of his life, including capture, death, and the myths that would grow around his name. These threads, woven together, form a story that is as human as it is legendary, inviting calm reflection and quiet engagement as we follow the unfolding of Ragnar's life. Even the greatest of legends must face moments of vulnerability, and for Ragnar Lothbrok, one such moment came in the form of capture and the inevitability of death. The sagas and chronicles tell of Ragnar's encounter with King Aella of Northumbria, a ruler who would ultimately become the instrument of his final fate. These events, though often recounted with drama, can also be told in a measured, reflective way, emphasizing the human experience beneath the layers of legend. By approaching this chapter gently, we gain insight not only into Ragnar's courage but also into the enduring nature of storytelling itself. Ragnar's capture was the culmination of both circumstance and miscalculation. Accounts suggest that he led a raid or expedition into Northumbria, seeking both resources and retribution for prior conflicts. Unlike earlier adventures, however, this journey did not unfold as expected. The strategic awareness that had guided him in previous raids met its limits in the complex political and military environment of foreign lands. The inevitability of capture, though perhaps sudden in legend, reflects the delicate balance of risk and uncertainty that underlies all human endeavor. It is a reminder that even the wisest and most courageous are subject to forces beyond their control. Upon his capture, Ragnar was placed in the hands of King Aella, whose enmity toward him was both personal and political. The sagas describe this period as tense and foreboding, yet it is possible to envision it as a time of quiet reflection, of a warrior contemplating the span of his life. Within these moments, Ragnar's strength and composure were most evident, not necessarily in physical action, but in his ability to face the unknown with measured courage. There is a subtle dignity in imagining a man so renowned and so tested preparing for a fate that he cannot change, reflecting the stoicism that forms the quieter backbone of heroic legend. The method of Ragnar's execution, famously involving a pit of venomous snakes, has captured imaginations for centuries. Tales of this death often emphasize horror, yet they can also be approached as a meditation on courage, acceptance, and the limits of control. Faced with impending mortality, Ragnar's responses, as recorded in legend, highlight composure, wit, and resilience. Even in the face of extreme danger, he remained conscious of his place in the broader narrative of life, death, and legend. By focusing on these human qualities rather than the sensational aspects of the story, we create a version of this episode that is both immersive and suitable for contemplative reflection. Ragnar's final moments are intertwined with stories of foresight and prophecy. He is said to have predicted that his death would inspire vengeance and elevate his sons to legendary status, a vision that blends courage with foresight. In this narrative, the focus is not on suffering but on the continuity of influence, the idea that one life, even at its end, can shape generations to come. For listeners, this perspective allows a slower, more reflective engagement with the story, emphasizing connection, legacy, and the quiet power of resilience over the spectacle of violence. The cultural significance of Ragnar's death extends beyond the immediate events. In the Viking worldview, the manner of one's passing could influence honor, memory, and the perception of bravery. Dying with composure, facing fate without despair, and maintaining awareness of one's impact on others were as important as battlefield victories. Ragnar's story, in this sense, becomes a meditation on the ways in which individuals navigate endings, influence the future, and become symbols for those who follow. This subtlety is particularly suited to calm, reflective storytelling, allowing the audience to consider the deeper meanings embedded in legend. Ragnar's capture and death also illuminate the broader political and social dynamics of the Viking era. Enemies and allies, local rulers and foreign powers, ambition and strategy, all converge to shape the events leading to his final moments. Understanding these contexts in a gentle, deliberate manner helps listeners appreciate the complexity of historical events without being overwhelmed by drama. It also provides perspective on the delicate interplay of human ambition, circumstance, and consequence, themes that resonate beyond the immediate story of Ragnar and into timeless considerations of leadership, courage, and mortality. Even after his death, Ragnar's presence persisted in memory, song, and saga. His life and passing inspired both immediate action, through the quests of his sons, and long-term cultural memory, preserving him as a figure larger than any single act. The notion that a person's influence can extend beyond their lifetime, shaped by the way stories are told and remembered, is central to understanding both Ragnar and the sagas themselves. It is a reminder that legend is not created solely through deeds, but also through reflection, interpretation, and the care with which stories are passed from one generation to the next. In recounting these events in a slow, measured way, we also find a rhythm suitable for contemplation and calm. The journey from capture to death can be imagined as a sequence of reflective moments, the quiet tension of anticipation, the acceptance of fate, and the awareness of legacy. Each moment unfolds gently, allowing listeners to engage with the human dimensions of Ragnar's experience rather than the sensational aspects. It is in this careful pacing that history, myth, and meditation converge, offering both fascination and tranquility. Through Ragnar's capture and death, we see the enduring qualities that define him as both a historical figure and a legendary character. Courage, foresight, composure, and the ability to influence the future even in the face of mortality. His story encourages reflection on the balance between action and contemplation, between human vulnerability and enduring impact. By focusing on these elements, we preserve the richness of the narrative while maintaining a tone of calm and measured storytelling, ideally suited for a reflective or sleep-friendly historical documentary. In the quiet aftermath, the story of Ragnar's life transitions naturally into the stories of his children, his legacy, and the myths that would grow around his name. His death, while dramatic in legend, becomes less about spectacle and more about the continuity of influence, the shaping of memory, and the resonance of character. It is within this continuity that the legend of Ragnar Lothbrok finds its most enduring form, bridging history, imagination, and the gentle rhythms of human experience. The story of Ragnar Lothbrok occupies a fascinating space between history and legend, a realm where facts are intertwined with myth, and where the line between reality and storytelling becomes gently blurred. Scholars and historians have debated the details of his life for centuries, questioning which elements are rooted in historical record and which belong to the realm of saga and imagination. This ambiguity, rather than diminishing the story, enriches it, offering an opportunity to explore history in a reflective, immersive way. By considering both myth and documented history, we can appreciate the layered nature of Ragnar's tale and the ways in which human memory shapes the stories we pass down. The sagas, written decades or even centuries after the events they describe, provide much of what is known about Ragnar. These narratives, often poetic and dramatic, were meant not only to record events but also to inspire, entertain, and transmit cultural values. They present a version of Ragnar that is larger than life, cunning, brave, and occasionally supernaturally aided, but they also reflect the lived realities of the Viking world, the importance of strategy, the challenges of survival, and the nuances of leadership. Reading these sagas slowly and contemplatively allows us to perceive both the beauty of their storytelling and the echoes of historical truth embedded within them. Historical evidence, including chronicles from England and Francia, hints at figures who may have inspired the tales of Ragnar. Names such as Reginhirus and other Norse leaders appear in records of raids and battles, suggesting that the legendary Ragnar could be a composite figure, drawn from multiple real individuals. This blending of history and imagination is common in oral traditions, where stories evolve to convey meaning, moral lessons, or cultural identity rather than strict chronology. In examining these sources, we are invited to engage with history as a layered narrative, where uncertainty and interpretation are not obstacles but opportunities for reflection and curiosity. The myths surrounding Ragnar often emphasize extraordinary courage, cunning, and the ability to overcome impossible odds. These qualities, while sometimes exaggerated, reflect core values of Viking society: bravery, intelligence, resilience, and honor. By focusing on the symbolic meaning of these stories, rather than literal accuracy, we gain insight into the ideals and aspirations of the culture that produced them. The narrative of Ragnar's life becomes both a historical meditation and a moral guide, illustrating lessons about leadership, courage, and the consequences of action, all told at a gentle, reflective pace. Ragnar's legendary status is also perpetuated through the deeds of his sons, whose own exploits blurred the boundaries between history and saga. The campaigns of Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, and others carried forward the reputation of their father, intertwining historical events with narrative embellishment. In this way, Ragnar's story becomes a prism through which we view a larger world, one in which family, ambition, and reputation interact, where deeds are remembered and retold, and where myth and history coexist in a delicate, harmonious balance. The debate over Ragnar's historicity invites contemplation about the nature of memory and storytelling. How much of what we know is fact? How much has been shaped by imagination, cultural expectation, or the passage of time? These questions are not intended to diminish his story but to enrich it, providing a reflective lens through which to explore the Viking era. Engaging with the uncertainties allows us to slow down, consider context, and appreciate the ways in which stories, whether entirely factual or partly legendary, shape our understanding of the past. In addition to written records, archaeological evidence offers glimpses of the world in which Ragnar, or figures like him, would have lived. Longships, burial mounds, fortifications, and artifacts all provide a tangible connection to the Viking Age. These findings do not provide specific confirmation of Ragnar's life, but they anchor the sagas in reality, reminding us that even legendary figures operated within a world of real rivers, seas, villages, and forests. Observing these remnants slowly and thoughtfully can evoke the atmosphere of the past, allowing listeners to feel immersed in a lived experience that complements the stories of myth and legend. The enduring fascination with Ragnar also reflects a broader human desire to understand and connect with the past. His story, situated between history and myth, illustrates how societies preserve memory, transmit values, and inspire future generations. It reminds us that the narratives we inherit are shaped as much by cultural imagination as by historical fact, and that exploring these narratives can be both calming and intellectually satisfying. The careful pacing of this exploration, emphasizing reflection over urgency, aligns perfectly with a sleep-friendly or relaxing storytelling approach. By considering Ragnar's story as a blend of history and legend, we can also appreciate the ways in which myths evolve over time. Each retelling, whether in saga, song, or modern media, contributes to a living tapestry that reflects the values, fears, and aspirations of those who tell it. In this sense, Ragnar is more than a historical figure. He becomes a symbol, a vessel through which we explore ideas of courage, leadership, mortality, and legacy. Engaging with this symbolism in a calm and contemplative manner allows us to absorb the richness of the story without the urgency or intensity often associated with dramatic narratives. Ultimately, the myths and historical debates surrounding Ragnar Lothbrok invite listeners to reflect on the relationship between fact and imagination, action and memory, and individual deeds and cultural legacy. By approaching the story slowly, considering both the historical possibilities and the legendary embellishments, we gain insight into the Viking world, the human experience, and the enduring power of storytelling itself. It is a reminder that history, when told thoughtfully and gently, can be both enlightening and soothing, offering a pathway for reflection, curiosity, and calm engagement. In this slow, meditative consideration of Ragnar, we are encouraged to explore not only what may have happened, but also why these stories matter, how they resonate across centuries, and what they reveal about human nature. The blend of myth and history, carefully navigated, allows us to experience the richness of his tale while maintaining a tone of relaxation, contemplation, and immersion in the rhythm of a world long past yet alive in memory and imagination. Ragnar Lothbrok's legend has transcended the boundaries of history and saga to enter the realm of popular culture, where his story continues to captivate audiences around the world. While the Viking sagas preserve his deeds in poetic, reflective form, modern interpretations have transformed Ragnar into a figure that resonates across media, from literature and television to film and digital storytelling. By exploring his portrayal in contemporary culture, we can observe how the past and present intertwine, how myth is reimagined, and how storytelling continues to soothe, inspire, and engage in new ways. One of the most significant modern representations of Ragnar Lothbrok appears in television, particularly in historical drama series that bring the Viking world to life. These adaptations often focus on the drama, the adventure, and the spectacle of Viking life, emphasizing battles, raids, and the complexities of leadership. Yet even amid these portrayals, there are moments of quiet reflection, scenes of domestic life, meditative contemplation before a raid, or subtle interactions with family and allies. By pacing the narrative thoughtfully and highlighting these calmer moments, audiences can experience not only the intensity of Ragnar's adventures but also the rhythm and texture of his life, which is as much about strategy, observation, and relationships as it is about heroism. Literature has also played a role in preserving and reinterpreting Ragnar's story. Historical novels, retellings of sagas, and imaginative reconstructions explore his life from multiple perspectives, blending documented history with legend and interpretation. Writers often emphasize the duality of Ragnar's existence: the fierce warrior navigating unpredictable seas and the reflective, observant man attending to family, alliances, and personal growth. In this way, literature invites readers to slow down and engage with the story thoughtfully, savoring details and nuances rather than rushing through action, making it suitable for contemplative or sleep-friendly engagement. The depiction of Ragnar in video games, comics, and digital media extends this cultural fascination, allowing audiences to immerse themselves in the Viking world interactively. Players may navigate longships, participate in raids, or explore the intricate relationships of Viking society, all while experiencing the balance between action and reflection that define the sagas. These representations, while often stylized, preserve elements of strategy, skill, and subtle observation that were central to Ragnar's life. Experiencing the story in this way encourages a gentle engagement with history, blending imagination, interaction, and calm reflection. Popular culture also amplifies the mythic qualities of Ragnar, portraying him as larger than life, cunning, fearless, and occasionally guided by prophecy or divine favor. These embellishments, though not strictly historical, echo the narrative patterns of the sagas, preserving the symbolic and moral dimensions of the story. By presenting him as a figure who navigates both human challenges and extraordinary circumstances, modern adaptations invite audiences to consider themes of courage, leadership, and the interplay between fate and personal choice. Engaging with these interpretations slowly allows listeners and viewers to absorb the resonance of the legend without feeling overwhelmed by spectacle or action. Ragnar's relationships, particularly with figures like Lagertha and his sons, are central to his cultural representation. Modern adaptations often highlight these dynamics, portraying him not only as a warrior but as a husband, father, and mentor. These intimate aspects of his life are particularly suited to calm, reflective storytelling, offering moments of emotional resonance amid depictions of adventure and conquest. The rhythm of family life, mentorship, and quiet decision-making provides a balance to the intensity of raids and battles, creating a multidimensional portrait that is engaging, immersive, and soothing in its pacing. The fascination with Ragnar in popular culture also reflects a broader human desire to connect with the past, to explore the lives of people who navigated worlds both familiar and strange. Through television, literature, and digital media, audiences are invited to inhabit Viking landscapes, understand social structures, and witness both grand exploits and quiet moments of reflection. This immersion, when experienced at a gentle pace, allows modern viewers to appreciate historical complexity, human psychology, and the interplay between individual agency and circumstance. It also encourages contemplation of values such as resilience, foresight, and leadership, echoing the themes that made Ragnar's story compelling in the first place. Merchandising, fan communities, and online discussions further extend Ragnar's presence in popular culture, creating spaces where his story can be explored collectively. These communities often focus on both historical curiosity and imaginative engagement, sharing insights about Viking life, debating interpretations of sagas, or creating new stories inspired by the legend. This communal aspect reflects the original purpose of oral tradition: to preserve, transmit, and reimagine stories in ways that resonate with each generation. Experiencing these narratives slowly, with attention to detail and context, enhances the sense of connection to history while providing a calming, immersive experience. Interestingly, popular culture also mirrors the duality of Ragnar's historical and legendary existence. On one hand, he is portrayed as a tactical genius and fearless warrior. On the other, he is depicted as a reflective, strategic thinker, attentive to family and community. This balance between action and contemplation aligns with the rhythm of the sagas, where calm observation often precedes decisive action, and where the moral and emotional dimensions of life are emphasized alongside physical achievements. By engaging with these portrayals thoughtfully, audiences can experience both excitement and relaxation, absorbing historical and legendary elements at a gentle pace. Ultimately, Ragnar Lothbrok's enduring presence in popular culture demonstrates the timeless appeal of his story. The combination of historical intrigue, legendary embellishment, and human insight allows modern audiences to explore complex themes in a manner that is immersive, reflective, and, when paced deliberately, calming. His story invites listeners and viewers to slow down, observe, and contemplate, not only the exploits of a legendary figure but also the deeper values of courage, strategy, legacy, and human connection. In this way, popular culture serves as a bridge, connecting the rhythms of Viking life with the reflective needs of contemporary audiences seeking both knowledge and relaxation. Through this lens, Ragnar becomes more than a figure of legend or historical curiosity. He becomes a guide for reflection, an emblem of human resilience and insight, and a story that can be experienced gently, step by step, in the quiet unfolding of narrative. Whether in a saga, a television episode, a novel, or a game, the story of Ragnar Lothbrok continues to offer moments of calm engagement, thoughtful observation, and immersive exploration, preserving his legacy while inviting audiences into a world of historical wonder and narrative depth. As we reflect on the life and legend of Ragnar Lothbrok, we are invited to consider not only the events he experienced but also the deeper lessons embedded in his story. His life, spanning daring raids, careful leadership, family bonds, and eventual capture, presents a tapestry of human experience, illustrating qualities that are both heroic and profoundly relatable. In examining Ragnar's narrative slowly and thoughtfully, we gain insight into courage, resilience, strategy, and the enduring impact of legacy, all while embracing a pace that encourages calm reflection. One of the first lessons from Ragnar's life is the value of observation and preparation. Throughout his raids, voyages, and leadership, he relied not solely on strength but on careful planning, attention to detail, and a keen awareness of both the natural world and the people around him. Longships required meticulous preparation, alliances demanded careful negotiation, and even domestic life required attentiveness and patience. By observing carefully and preparing deliberately, Ragnar was able to navigate challenges, mitigate risks, and achieve success in endeavors that might have overwhelmed a less thoughtful individual. This principle, gentle in its unfolding, reminds us of the quiet power of patience and foresight. Another lesson emerges from his approach to leadership. Ragnar exemplified a balance between authority and empathy, decisiveness and reflection. As a king, he had to maintain order, inspire loyalty, and make strategic decisions that affected both individuals and communities. He combined courage with intelligence, action with contemplation, and personal skill with reliance on those around him. This holistic approach to leadership demonstrates that true influence arises not from brute force alone but from an awareness of human dynamics, the ability to guide rather than command, and the capacity to navigate both immediate and long-term challenges thoughtfully. Family and legacy form a central theme of Ragnar's story, offering insights that extend beyond the battlefield or the halls of kingship. His relationships with his wives and children, particularly his guidance of his sons, reveal the quiet ways in which influence and values are transmitted. The nurturing of knowledge, skill, and character within a family mirrors the broader cultivation of leadership and culture. By balancing duty to family with ambition and adventure, Ragnar illustrates the importance of interconnectedness, responsibility, and foresight in creating enduring impact. The rhythm of domestic life, with its cycles of learning, care, and mentorship, provides a counterpoint to the dramatic exploits, offering a space for calm reflection on the subtler, yet equally significant, aspects of life. Courage, both in battle and in facing fate, is another enduring lesson. Ragnar's bravery, evident in raids and adventures, is complemented by his composure in moments of vulnerability, particularly in the narrative of his capture and death. Facing circumstances beyond his control, he maintained dignity, insight, and awareness of his influence on future generations. This aspect of his story reminds us that courage is not only physical but also mental and emotional. It is the ability to navigate uncertainty, to maintain composure in adversity, and to act with integrity and foresight even when outcomes are uncertain. The interplay of history and myth in Ragnar's story further deepens the lessons we can draw. While the details of his life may be debated, the values, ideals, and symbolic meanings embedded in the sagas offer timeless insights. Bravery, strategy, leadership, and legacy are presented in ways that transcend the literal events, allowing listeners to reflect on qualities that are universally relevant. By engaging with the story as both history and legend, we learn to appreciate the ways in which human experience is recorded, remembered, and interpreted, and how these narratives can guide us in thoughtful and reflective ways. Ragnar's life also teaches the importance of adaptability and resilience. His experiences, from early raids to kingship, from family life to eventual capture, demonstrate a capacity to navigate changing circumstances with insight and flexibility. The Viking world was unpredictable, shaped by environmental challenges, political intrigue, and the constant presence of risk. Ragnar's ability to respond effectively, to anticipate threats, and to adjust strategy highlights the enduring value of resilience and adaptability in the face of uncertainty. It is a lesson that resonates beyond historical context, offering a gentle reflection on how to approach challenges in any era. Storytelling itself emerges as a profound lesson in Ragnar's narrative. His deeds, recorded in sagas and retold through generations, illustrate the power of narrative to preserve memory, transmit values, and inspire reflection. The sagas are not only records of events but also meditative guides, combining action with contemplation, drama with reflection, and history with moral insight. By engaging with these stories slowly, allowing moments of detail, rhythm, and atmosphere to unfold, we participate in a timeless practice of reflection, learning, and calm engagement with the past. Finally, the legacy of Ragnar Lothbrok reminds us of the enduring impact of human action. His life influenced not only his immediate family but also the broader culture, inspiring generations of leaders, warriors, and storytellers. The combination of courage, wisdom, reflection, and connection ensures that his story continues to resonate centuries later, offering insights into leadership, resilience, and the human capacity for influence. In contemplating his legacy, we are invited to consider our own contributions, the values we uphold, and the ways in which our actions and relationships shape the world around us. By reflecting on these lessons in a calm, measured way, we experience Ragnar's story as more than a tale of conquest or adventure. It becomes a meditation on human character, a guide to navigating uncertainty, and an invitation to embrace patience, insight, and resilience. The rhythm of his life, the balance of action and reflection, and the careful cultivation of relationships and legacy all offer gentle guidance for thoughtful engagement with the world. In conclusion, Ragnar Lothbrok's life, though steeped in legend and partially shrouded in historical uncertainty, provides a rich tapestry of lessons in courage, leadership, adaptability, and legacy. By approaching his story slowly and reflectively, we can appreciate the subtleties of his experiences, the depth of his character, and the enduring influence of his life. His narrative invites contemplation, encourages mindfulness, and offers a gentle rhythm that is both immersive and calming, making it ideal for reflection, relaxation, and the thoughtful enjoyment of history. Beyond family and cultural impact, Ragnar's legacy extends into the realm of human imagination, showing how stories can evolve yet retain their essence across centuries. His life reminds us that legends are living entities, shaped by each generation that tells them. Every retelling, whether around a medieval hearth or through modern media, breathes new life into his tale, allowing listeners to explore courage, strategy, and resilience in ways that are subtle and reflective. This process of continuous reinterpretation highlights the timeless appeal of his story, proving that the lessons embedded within it remain relevant, calming, and inspiring. Another dimension of his enduring influence is the quiet, meditative way his story encourages reflection. Listening to tales of Ragnar allows us to slow down, consider the rhythm of his life, and notice the balance between action and contemplation. His adventures and leadership decisions offer insight into problem-solving, foresight, and strategic thinking, while his family interactions remind us of the importance of relationships, mentorship, and nurturing values. In this sense, his legacy is not only about deeds or conquests but about the careful, thoughtful ways one navigates life, creating a resonance that endures far beyond any battle or voyage. Finally, Ragnar's story serves as a bridge between the past and present, linking modern audiences with an era long gone yet perpetually alive through narrative. By engaging with his life slowly and reflectively, we experience the continuity of human experience, the challenges, triumphs, fears, and hopes that remain remarkably consistent across time. Ragnar Lothbrok in this way becomes more than a historical or legendary figure. He becomes a guide for reflection, a source of inspiration, and a gentle companion for meditation on life, legacy, and the enduring power of storytelling.